There is a nation right now in the very heart of the African continent where the official government controls less than 1/3 of its own sovereign territory. It is a land where extremist groups have carried out 9 of the 20 deadliest militant attacks on Earth in a single year. It is a place where over 2 million people have been violently uprooted, forced to flee from the only homes they have ever known, leaving behind their ancestral fields and their livelihoods. It is a reality where journalists who attempt to broadcast the unvarnished truth suddenly disappear, only to reappear later in military uniform on state television. That nation is Burkina Faso, and as the crisis deepens, the international community is rapidly choosing sides. On one side of this profound divide stands a 37-year-old military president who has executed an unprecedented geopolitical pivot. He has expelled French military forces. He has expelled the United States. He has nationalized strategic gold mines, reclaiming the wealth beneath the soil, and he has boldly told institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to stay out of his nation's internal affairs. To millions of Africans observing from afar, Ibrahim Traoré is not just a leader, he is a revolutionary symbol, heralded by many as the new Sankara, breathing life into a dormant dream of absolute independence. Stay with us, this is more than a headline, it is a hinge in history. If this story resonates, show your support with a like, a comment, or a subscription. It means more than numbers, it keeps the story alive. On the other side of this revolutionary fervor lies a catastrophic security reality and a rapidly worsening humanitarian crisis. We are witnessing 2 monumental truths existing simultaneously within the exact same borders. The world, in its simplistic view, demands a binary narrative. You must either blindly champion the revolution or entirely condemn the state. But true understanding requires us to look at the calloused hands of the 23 million citizens who are actually living through this. They are the ones caught between the soaring rhetoric of sovereignty and the brutal reality of a fractured nation. Before we can even begin to evaluate the reactions of regional leaders or Western powers, we must firmly establish what is actually happening on the red earth of the Sahel. Without the unvarnished facts on the ground, any analysis is merely an illusion. And the facts, independently verified, are incredibly severe. Since the current administration took power in September 2022, militant Islamist groups, primarily those affiliated with Al-Qaeda, the Messina Liberation Front, and Ansarul Islam, have waged a sustained and devastating campaign. This is not a distant skirmish, it is a relentless pressure that has fundamentally altered the map of who controls the nation. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the civilian cost is immense, creating a human tragedy of staggering proportions. The people are fighting a war on 2 fronts, one against armed insurgency and another against a collapsing public health infrastructure. In just the first 5 months of the year 2025, international monitors from UNICEF documented 2,168 cases of measles. To put that into perspective, that number nearly matches the entire total from the whole of 2023. The country is simultaneously attempting to manage severe outbreaks of polio, hepatitis E, and yellow fever. Meanwhile, independent reporting on the true scale of this suffering has become nearly impossible. In a nation that supporters describe as experiencing a glorious renaissance, these heartbreaking statistics are not fabricated Western talking points. They are the heavily documented observations of dedicated organizations with researchers stationed on the ground, such as Human Rights Watch, the Africa Center for Strategic Studies, and the International Crisis Group. We do not highlight these devastating figures to condemn the pursuit of a sovereign future. We bring them to the light because a full, honest picture of what Africa's leaders are responding to must deeply include what is actually happening to the men, women, and children striving to survive. You cannot build a fortress of dignity if the people inside are perishing from preventable diseases and displacement. The pursuit of freedom must ultimately translate into the protection of life. When a state undertakes such a monumental struggle to redefine its destiny, breaking the chains of neo-colonialism while simultaneously battling an existential internal threat, one would naturally expect the continent's most powerful institutions to step forward. You would expect a chorus of regional support, strategic intervention, or at least a unified diplomatic stance to guide a member state through its darkest and most defining hour. Yet, as the millions of citizens of this proud nation carry the crushing weight of both an inspiring revolution and a devastating humanitarian collapse, they look to their neighbors for solidarity. Instead, they are met with something far more chilling. Where are the regional powers? Where is the collective voice of the continent? The answer is not a guiding light, nor is it a helping hand. The answer is a deafening, calculated silence that echoes through the halls of power. As the dust settles over the displaced camps and the newly nationalized mines, we must ask the ultimate question: is this nation being saved, or is it being systematically sacrificed by the very institutions sworn to protect it? The African Union, representing 55 member states from its headquarters in Addis Ababa, is supposed to be the continent's highest institutional shield. Its Peace and Security Council is designed to be the first line of response when an African state slides into crisis. So, what has the institution actually done for Burkina Faso? The formal record is a stark illustration of bureaucratic distance. Since 2022, the nation has experienced two rapid changes of power, and the response from the Commission has been consistent only in its lack of impact. They have formally suspended the country, moving it to the margins of the institutional map. But beyond that formal act of suspension, there is almost nothing. The deadline for the restoration of constitutional order, set for July 1st, 2024, came and went with no elections held. Under the new transition plan, it is quietly accepted that the current leadership may remain until at least 2029. The response from the institutional leaders, public silence and formal distance. Let us take a moment here, not to rush forward, but to give thanks. Write a comment with a simple thank you to Traore, to Burkina Faso, or to the spirit of sovereignty itself. Gratitude is not a formality, it is recognition, it is dignity expressed in words. When you add your voice of thanks, you are not just engaging with a video, you are standing in solidarity with a story of freedom and pride. So, before we continue, take this pause to comment your thank you. Together, those words become a beacon that shines far beyond the screen. The diplomatic challenge in the Sahel has been described by senior analysts as irretrievably broken. This is not the language of external critics, but the sober assessment of leading conflict research organizations. The institutions are suspending countries they have no mechanism to bring back, creating a structural problem that is inherited by each new chairperson on their first day in office. We see a system that is effective at issuing formal verdicts, but entirely hollow when it comes to the complex reality of saving lives and securing territory. Regional leaders from Nigeria to South Africa to Ghana are watching, weighing their options, and slowly choosing their positions in a game where the stakes are the lives of 23 million people. On the streets of Johannesburg, Lagos, and London, ordinary Africans are asking the question that nobody at the top is willing to answer. While the high-level summits continue and the communiques are drafted in polished language, the Red Earth continues to absorb the cost of this institutional paralysis. The silence is becoming a statement in itself, a declaration that institutional Africa is currently unwilling to formally defend or formally condemn the struggle for sovereignty when it is accompanied by such a severe humanitarian burden. The institutional shadows of Africa chose to close their eyes to the complexities of the Sahel, but across the ocean, that silence was abruptly shattered by a voice of foreign military authority. On the 3rd of April, 2025, the crisis entered a completely new and explosive phase. It was a phase that ignited the diaspora and the continent like a spark dropped into a dry forest. The commander of the United States Africa Command stood before a Senate Armed Services Committee in Washington and delivered a statement that nobody was prepared for. In a highly public forum, he directly accused the administration in Ouagadougou of misusing the nation's newly reclaimed wealth. Before we reveal the next chapter, which is perhaps the most powerful assertion of sovereignty you will ever hear, I want to pause and speak directly to you. If this channel has moved you, if these stories are touching something deep in your spirit, then consider becoming a member, not for exclusive content or perks, but because supporting this channel is directly supporting narratives that mainstream media refuses to tell. Every membership is a vote for Sankara's Echoes mission. Every member becomes a co-creator of the revolution we are documenting. Join us. Stand with the principle that African wealth belongs to Africa. The reaction to this foreign accusation was immediate. radiating from every corner of the globe. However, the response from the presidential palace was measured, precise, and entirely surgical. The truth, when it was finally forced into the light, became a profound embarrassment for the old geopolitical order. During an intense press briefing, the four-star general was compelled to partially walk back his aggressive claims. He had to publicly acknowledge the undeniable evidence that the very country he accused of misusing its nationalized gold was, in fact, using those precious resources to purchase vital farming equipment for its people. The gold was not disappearing into the hidden offshore accounts of a corrupt elite. It was being actively transformed into tractors, seeds, and the fierce promise of absolute food self-sufficiency. This extraordinary admission sent massive shockwaves through the streets. On the 30th of April, 2025, the red dirt of Nation Square in Ouagadougou shook under the weight of tens of thousands of citizens. They did not gather under the banner of any foreign power. They gathered to answer the remarks made in Washington. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a boundless sea of calloused hands and proud voices, demonstrating a level of organic popular support that cannot be manufactured by state media. And, in a move that sent the clearest possible message of absolute defiance to the West, their leader immediately boarded a flight to Moscow, signaling the permanent end of traditional Western monopolies over African diplomacy. While institutional Africa hesitates and foreign generals make embarrassing miscalculations, ordinary Africans are not waiting for official permission to speak. From the busy streets of Accra to the bustling markets of Lagos, and reaching far across the oceans to the diaspora communities in London, Paris, and New York, the conversation is raw, loud, and incredibly clear. In neighboring Ghana, passionate youth demonstrators publicly offered to volunteer and shed their own blood alongside the Burkinabe army, openly defying the strict security guidance of their own government. In Liberia, the state apparatus actually had to crack down on citizens who took to the streets in fierce solidarity with the movement in the Sahel. To these millions of passionate observers, the struggle in Ouagadougou is not just a local political crisis, it is the ultimate front line of a continental war for dignity. Seeing this massive wave of populist energy, certain regional heavyweights began to make their carefully choreographed moves. On the 3rd of November, 2025, former South African President Jacob Zuma arrived at the presidential palace in Ouagadougou. The optics were deliberately designed to project an image of unbreakable continental solidarity. A closed-door meeting was followed by a highly public address, where the visit was framed as a glorious celebration of liberation. It was the most dramatic and visible regional endorsement the young administration had received to date. But here is where our commitment to the full, unvarnished truth must stand as firm as a rock. While institutional leaders and visiting dignitaries celebrate the undeniable victories of sovereignty, the expulsion of foreign troops, and the nationalization of resources, they deliberately look away from the devastating cost on the ground. They applaud the new national gold refineries and the diplomatic defiance, but they remain utterly silent on the tragic civilian toll heavily documented in the rural provinces. They praise the revolution from the safety of distant capitals, but they do not mention the families torn apart by the relentless militant pressure. Every single voice in this geopolitical theater, from the condemning generals in Washington to the cheering politicians in neighboring capitals, is only telling half of the story. Because the harsh, uncompromising reality is this: popularity, no matter how vast, cannot shield a village from an insurgent strike. You cannot simply eat sovereignty, and you cannot build a stable, enduring nation upon a foundation of profound insecurity. If the cheering crowds and the nationalized minds represent the glorious harvest of power, what is the ultimate, devastating price being extracted from the red soil to sustain it? We must confront the most uncomfortable truth of our current era. Why do some leaders remain in power for 15 or 20 years without solving a single fundamental challenge for their people? The answer lies in the hidden agendas that often operate behind the curtain of exported democracy. In many cases, the systems designed to select our leaders are rigged to ensure that those who reach the top are the ones least interested in African unity. They are the ones who have different homes in the different capitals of Europe and America. They do not see the importance of a unified continent because their personal safety net is woven from foreign threads. When a leader is treated for a common illness in a foreign hospital, he is silently announcing that he has no faith in the very nation he governs. He is telling his citizens that the quality of medicine, the quality of doctors, and the quality of life he provides for them is not good enough for himself. If they knew they had no other place to go, if they knew their survival depended on the clinics in their own villages, they would do something great for this continent. This is the betrayal of the elite, a psychological distance that keeps them from feeling the heat of the fire that consumes the ordinary African family. Take a second, right here, to tell us where you are watching from. Type the name of your city, your land, the soil beneath your feet, and as you do, know this. Sankara's echo sends you not just thanks but a blessing for strength in your hands, for pride in your heart, for light on the road ahead. The comments below become a map of connection, showing that this message reaches far beyond borders. The military leaders who have stepped forward in this hour are often criticized by the very systems that failed us. But we must ask, why shouldn't these soldiers sit down and strategize for a single army for Africa? If we can create a standby force that does not wait for a nod from the West, we can solve the conflicts in Sudan and the instability in the Sahel ourselves. We are waiting for the United Kingdom or the United States to intervene, yet history shows that their intervention is often the precursor to extraction. We have seen what is happening in the world today. We have seen nations like Iran maintain their resistance even after losing their highest generals. They possess a spiritual and military discipline that refuses to be broken by external pressure. Can African leaders learn from this? Can they realize that the world is moving toward a multipolar reality where only those who stand together will survive? Donald Trump has already spoken loudly about our resources. He will not sit quietly while a divided Africa holds the treasures that his own nation lacks. America and other global powers will look for opportunities, and they will find them in our division. Are we ready to enter into good agreements? Are we ready to sign contracts that protect the harvest of our children instead of the bank accounts of the few? The time for political will is now. We have the people, we have the market, and we have the tremendous value underground. What we lack is the courage to speak with one voice, to form one currency, and to allow the free movement of our own brothers across the artificial borders drawn a century ago in a room in Berlin. What you have witnessed today is not a conclusion, but an opening. Africa's story of pride and independence is still being written, and each voice that joins makes the chorus stronger. Subscribe now, not as a favor, but as a commitment to follow this journey. Because the next video will not just continue the story, it may reshape how you see the world. Do not let this moment pass into silence. Subscribe and stand ready for the chapter that comes after this one. The fire of the new revolution is burning, and it is being fueled by the realization that we are the masters of our own destiny. Through the unwavering stance of Ibrahim Traoré, we see the blueprint for a continent that no longer begs for foreign approval but demands its rightful place in the sun. The path taken by Burkina Faso proves that when a nation decides to protect its own soil, the chains of dependency begin to shatter. As we rise to meet the challenges of this new era, let the world know that the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré is not just a voice from the Sahel, but the awakening soul of a unified and sovereign Africa.